You've been lied to your entire life. And the worst part? You've been lying to yourself too. Right now, as you're watching this, there's someone out there living the life you convinced yourself was impossible. They're getting the respect you beg for. They're commanding the rooms you shrink in. They're building the empire you dream about, while scrolling through other people's success at 2 a.m., feeling that familiar ache in your chest, that burning question that keeps you awake. When is it going to be my turn? I used to ask myself that same question. I used to watch people half as smart as me get twice the opportunities. I used to wonder why I was always the one explaining, justifying, proving my worth to people who wouldn't recognize talent if it slapped them across their mediocre faces. I felt that rage, that white-hot fury when you realize you've been playing a game where the rules were designed to keep you losing. But here's what changed everything for me, and it's going to change everything for you. The game isn't rigged against you. You just never learned the real rules. While you were being taught to be nice and wait your turn, others were learning how power actually works. They were studying the psychology of influence while you were studying how to be likable. They were building unshakable confidence while you were building elaborate apologies for existing. The truth that nobody wants to tell you? The reason you're not where you want to be isn't because you're not good enough. It's because you're still asking permission from people who will never give it to you. You're still waiting for someone else to validate what you already know about yourself. You're still playing by rules that were written by people who needed you to stay exactly where you are. But what if you stopped asking? What if you stopped waiting? What if you stopped being the victim of other people's insecurities and started being the architect of your own inevitable rise? Because that's exactly what's about to happen. In the next few minutes, you're going to learn the 7 psychological principles that separate the people who get everything they want from the people who get what they're given. You're going to understand why some people command respect without demanding it, why some people get opportunities without begging for them, why some people live like kings while others serve like subjects. This isn't theory. This isn't motivation. This is surgical precision applied to the mechanics of human psychology. By the time you finish watching this, you won't just think differently. You'll move differently, speak differently, exist differently in every room you enter. Now, I want you to drop this affirmation in the comments. I'm no longer asking. I am choosing. Type it like you mean it. Because after today, asking permission will feel like betraying yourself. Number 1, your mouth is your enemy. I learned this lesson the hard way when I was 23, sitting in a conference room full of people who made more money in a month than I made in a year. I was so desperate to prove I belonged there that I filled every pause with nervous chatter, every silence with desperate attempts at wit. I thought participation meant talking. I thought value meant volume. I was wrong. Devastatingly, embarrassingly wrong. The most powerful person in that room barely said 10 words the entire meeting. But when he spoke, everyone leaned forward. When he asked a question, the temperature shifted. When he remained silent while others rambled, you could feel them slowly realizing they were revealing too much, saying too much, showing too much of their hand. That's when it hit me. Your mouth is your enemy. Every word you speak is information you're giving away for free. Every explanation you offer is a weakness you're advertising. Every time you fill an uncomfortable silence, you're telling the room that their comfort matters more than your power. Silence makes people terrified because it forces them to confront what they're really thinking. When you stop rushing to fill every pause, something beautiful happens. People start projecting their fears onto your quiet confidence. They assume you're judging them, evaluating them, seeing through their masks. And here's the devastating truth: you are. While they're talking, they're showing you exactly who they are. They're revealing their insecurities, their desperation, their pressure points. But when you're always talking, you're the one being dissected. You're the one showing your cards while they keep theirs hidden. Machiavelli once said, "Everyone sees what you appear to be. Few experience what you really are." Your silence creates a canvas where people paint their own version of your thoughts, your judgments, your power. They fill your silence with their own fears, and suddenly you're not just another person in the room. You're the person everyone is trying to impress. I started practicing this immediately. Instead of jumping into conversations, I started observing them. Instead of proving I was smart, I started letting others prove they weren't as smart as they thought. Instead of competing for airtime, I started controlling the rhythm of every interaction simply by choosing when my words were worth the room's attention. The transformation was immediate and undeniable. People started coming to me for my opinion instead of me desperately offering it. They started working harder for my approval because I stopped giving it away for free. They started wondering what I was thinking because I stopped thinking out loud. Here's what nobody tells you about silence. It's not just the absence of sound. It's the presence of power. The person who can sit comfortably in silence while others squirm is the person who controls the energy of the room. They don't need to speak to lead. They don't need to explain to influence. They don't need noise to command attention. Silence isn't the absence of power. It's the proof that you don't need noise to control the room. Number 2, your feelings are not your facts. 2 years ago, someone I trusted completely destroyed me. Not physically, not financially, but emotionally. They took everything I had shared with them in confidence and used it as ammunition in a room full of people whose respect I desperately wanted. I sat there, listening to my private struggles being twisted into public entertainment, feeling that familiar burn of humiliation crawling up my throat. My first instinct was to explode, to defend myself, to explain what really happened, to make them understand how wrong they were, how much they had hurt me, how betrayed I felt. I wanted to scream until my voice gave out. I wanted them to feel even a fraction of what they had put me through. But something stopped me. Maybe it was pride, maybe it was intuition, but I sat there in complete silence while my world burned around me. And I learned the most valuable lesson of my life. Your emotions are not your identity, they're information. They're temporary chemical reactions that you can observe, analyze, and then choose whether or not to act on. That moment of betrayal didn't break me. It revealed something more powerful than revenge could ever be. The ability to remain completely calm while someone else loses control. While they were showing everyone in that room exactly who they really were, I was showing everyone exactly who I was becoming. Here's what emotional untouchability actually looks like. When someone tries to provoke you, you don't react. you collect data. When someone betrays you, you don't collapse, you take notes. When someone tries to manipulate your emotions, you don't give them the satisfaction of success. You give them the discomfort of failure. This isn't about becoming a robot. This isn't about suppressing your feelings or pretending you don't care about anything. This is about understanding that your emotional reactions are choices, not reflexes. This is about realizing that the person who stays calm during chaos becomes the person everyone else looks to for stability. Machiavelli once said, "Since love and fear can hardly exist together, if we must choose between them, it is far safer to be feared than loved." But this isn't about making people afraid of you through aggression. This is about making people respect the fact that you cannot be emotionally manipulated, controlled, or predicted by anyone who thinks they know which buttons to push. When you become emotionally untouchable, something incredible happens. People start coming to you during their crises because they know you won't add to their chaos. They start trusting you with bigger responsibilities because they know you won't crumble under pressure. They start seeing you as leadership material because they know you can make clear decisions when everyone else is drowning in feelings. But here's the part that will change your life forever. When you master your emotional responses, you start seeing other people's emotional reactions as information about them, not verdicts about you. When someone gets angry at you for setting a boundary, you don't see it as evidence that you were wrong. You see it as evidence that your boundary was necessary. When someone tries to guilt you for pursuing your goals, you don't see it as proof that you're selfish. You see it as proof that your success threatens their comfort with mediocrity. Your emotional reactions should be a choice, not a reflex. Master this, and you'll never again be controlled by anyone who thinks they know how to make you dance to their music. Number 3. Control information, like your life depends on it. I used to be an open book. I thought transparency was honesty, and honesty was virtue. I shared my struggles, my plans, my fears, my dreams with anyone who showed even casual interest. I mistook oversharing for connection and vulnerability for strength. I was wrong about everything. The wake-up call came when I realized that every piece of personal information I had shared was being used against me. My struggles became evidence of my weakness. My dreams became jokes at my expense. My fears became weapons in other people's hands. I had given away my most valuable currency, information about myself, for free, to people who were collecting it like ammunition for future battles. Information is power, not money, not connections, not even talent. Information. Who has it? Who needs it? Who controls the flow of it? This determines who holds the real power in any situation. While you were being taught that sharing is caring, others were learning that knowledge is leverage. Every conversation you have is an intelligence-gathering operation. Every person you meet is either gathering information about you or sharing information about themselves. The question is, are you conscious of this exchange, or are you accidentally giving away state secrets while they're collecting classified intelligence? Here's what changed everything for me. I started treating my personal information like a classified government document, not because I had anything to hide, but because I finally understood that mystery creates respect, scarcity creates value, And the less people know about your internal process, the more they have to respect your external results. Watch the most powerful people you know. How much do you really know about their private struggles, their detailed plans, their moment-to-moment emotional state? Almost nothing. And that's not an accident. They understand that when people don't know how you do what you do, they're forced to respect the fact that you do it. Machiavelli once said, "The wise man does at once what the fool does finally." While others are eventually forced to reveal their entire hand when circumstances demand it, you're going to be strategic about what you reveal and when you reveal it. Your personal information, your challenges, your strategies, your next moves, these are privileges to be earned, not rights to be assumed. But here's the crucial part. While you're becoming selective about what you share, you need to become systematic about what you gather. Pay attention to what people tell you when they think you're not paying attention. Listen to what they reveal about themselves when they're trying to impress you, gain your sympathy, or justify their failures. People will tell you everything you need to know about them if you're patient enough to listen and smart enough to remember. They'll tell you their weaknesses while complaining about their problems. They'll tell you their strategies while bragging about their successes. They'll tell you their fears while explaining why they can't do what you're doing. This isn't manipulation. This is awareness. This isn't taking advantage. This is paying attention. When you understand people's motivations, their pressure points, their deepest needs, you can create value for them in ways that serve your goals too. When you control information, you control options. When you control options, you control outcomes. Information isn't meant to be hoarded forever. It's meant to be deployed at exactly the right moment for maximum impact. Learn this, and you'll never again be surprised by someone else's moves, because you'll have seen them coming long before they made them. Number 4, make yourself irreplaceable through ruthless competence. I spent 3 years being the nicest person at every job I ever had. I was agreeable, accommodating, always willing to help, never causing problems, flying under the radar, and hoping that someone would notice how pleasant I was to work with. I thought job security came from being liked. I thought getting ahead meant not making waves. Then I watched someone half as nice, but twice as competent, get promoted over me. Again, and again. And that's when I realized the brutal truth that nobody wants to tell you. Nice doesn't make you necessary. Agreeable doesn't make you valuable. Being easy to work with doesn't guarantee anything except being easy to replace. You know what does? Being so undeniably good at what you do that replacing you would cost more time, money, and risk than keeping you around and paying you exactly what you're worth, even when you're demanding respect, setting boundaries, and refusing to accept treatment that doesn't match your value. This was the most painful lesson I ever learned, because it required me to admit that I had been using likability as a substitute for competence. I had been hoping that being pleasant would somehow compensate for being ordinary. I had been trying to secure my position through personality instead of performance. Competence is your insurance policy against other people's moods, preferences, and changing loyalties. When you're irreplaceably good at something important, people have to deal with you as you are, not as they wish you were. They might not like your directness, your boundaries, your unwillingness to participate in office politics. but they need your results more than they need their comfort. Here's what building irreplaceable competence actually looks like. You don't just do your job. You understand your industry better than people who've been in it twice as long. You don't just meet expectations. You anticipate needs that your boss doesn't even know they have yet. You don't just solve problems. You prevent crises that everyone else would have stumbled into blindly. Machiavelli once said, "There is nothing more difficult to take in hand, more perilous to conduct, or more uncertain in its success than to take the lead in the introduction of a new order of things." This is exactly why most people avoid becoming irreplaceable. It requires taking risks, challenging existing systems, proposing better ways of doing things. It requires the courage to be wrong sometimes in exchange for the possibility of being extraordinarily right. But here's what happens when you commit to this level of competence. People stop questioning your methods and start studying them. They stop trying to manage you and start trying to keep you. Your value becomes so obvious that arguing with you becomes counterproductive, even when they disagree with your approach. I learned this by becoming obsessed with being the best at something that mattered. Not the most liked, not the most cooperative, not the most available, the most valuable. I studied every aspect of my field until I knew things that people with decades more experience didn't know. I solved problems that had been accepted as just how things are. I made myself the person who made everything around them function better, smoother, more profitably. The transformation was immediate and undeniable. Suddenly, people who used to dismiss my opinions were asking for my advice. People who used to see me as replaceable were offering me better opportunities. People who used to take me for granted were competing to keep me around. When you reach this level, something beautiful happens. You stop competing with other people and start competing with previous versions of yourself. You stop worrying about job security and start choosing between opportunities. You stop asking for raises and start negotiating partnerships. Most importantly, you stop being afraid of other people's opinions because your results speak louder than their critiques. When you're irreplaceably competent, confidence isn't something you have to fake or build. It's something you earn through undeniable evidence of your worth. Competence is the foundation of every other form of power. Build it first, build it ruthlessly, and everything else becomes negotiable. Number 5. Never explain yourself to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. 5 years ago, I made a decision that changed my entire life trajectory. I left a stable job that everyone thought I was crazy to leave, to pursue something that everyone thought I was stupid to pursue. The reaction was swift and brutal. Family members questioned my sanity. Friends predicted my failure. Colleagues whispered about my arrogance, my selfishness, my inevitable crash back to reality. I spent months trying to explain my reasoning. I presented detailed plans, financial projections, market research. I tried to help them understand that this wasn't impulsive. It was calculated. This wasn't reckless. It was strategic. This wasn't fantasy. It was vision. Nothing I said mattered. They had already decided who I was, what I was capable of, and what I deserved. They had made up their minds based on their own fears, their need to feel superior, their investment in keeping me in a box that made them comfortable. These people weren't confused about my potential. They were threatened by it. That's when I learned the most liberating truth of my life. There are people in this world who are not confused about you. They're committed to their version of you because changing their mind would require them to change their entire worldview. They need you to fail because your success would mean they have no excuse for their mediocrity. You cannot logic someone out of a position they didn't logic themselves into. You cannot convince someone to respect you when their entire identity depends on feeling superior to you. You cannot make someone see your worth when they need you to be worthless to feel valuable themselves. Machiavelli once said, "Men judge generally more by the eye than by the hand, for everyone can see and few can feel. Everyone sees what you appear to be. Few experience what you really are." The people committed to misunderstanding you aren't interested in experiencing who you really are. They're interested in maintaining their version of who you appear to be, regardless of evidence to the contrary. Here's what changes everything. When you stop explaining yourself to people who aren't genuinely trying to understand you, you free up enormous amounts of mental and emotional energy. Energy that you can redirect toward building relationships with people who recognize your worth instinctively, creating work that speaks for itself, developing skills that make their opinions completely irrelevant. The people who love you won't need lengthy explanations of your choices. They'll trust your judgment even when they don't understand your strategy. The right opportunities won't require you to convince anyone that you deserve them. Your qualifications will open doors before you even knock. The right relationships won't demand that you shrink yourself to make others comfortable with their own limitations. This doesn't mean you become arrogant or dismissive of all feedback. It means you become ruthlessly selective about whose opinions actually matter, whose understanding is worth pursuing, whose approval is worth earning. Not everyone's opinion of you deserves your attention, and certainly not everyone's misunderstanding of you deserves your correction. When someone shows you through their words, their actions, their persistent refusal to see evidence that contradicts their predetermined opinion of you, that they're committed to misunderstanding you, believe them, and then redirect your energy toward people who are committed to understanding you, supporting you, growing alongside you. Your worth doesn't decrease based on someone else's inability to see it. Your value doesn't diminish because someone else is invested in underestimating it. Stop giving people who've already made up their minds about you the power to make you doubt what you know about yourself. Some people need you to be small so they can feel big. Don't give them what they need. Give them what they've earned. Absolutely nothing. Number 6. Build systems, not dependencies. I used to think freedom was a feeling, that rush of possibility when you imagined escaping all your current constraints, all your current responsibilities, all your current limitations. I thought freedom meant not having to answer to anyone, not having to show up anywhere, not having to do anything you didn't feel like doing in any given moment. I was confusing freedom with chaos. Real freedom isn't the absence of structure. It's the presence of structures that serve your goals instead of other people's agendas. It's building systems that work whether other people participate or not, that generate results whether other people approve or not, that create value whether other people recognize it or not. Most people build their entire lives around other people's schedules, other people's decisions, other people's moods. Their happiness depends on their boss's approval. Their income depends on their employer's budget. Their self-worth depends on their partner's validation. Their social life depends on other people's availability. They've created elaborate networks of dependency and called it connection. This isn't connection. This is voluntary imprisonment with better marketing. When your emotional stability, your financial security, your sense of purpose, your daily schedule all depend on other people's consistency, you're not living your life. You're borrowing it from people who can revoke your access at any moment. I learned this lesson when every single system in my life collapsed simultaneously. The job I thought was secure disappeared overnight. The relationship I thought was permanent ended without warning. The friends I thought were loyal revealed their true priorities when supporting me became inconvenient. In one devastating month, I discovered that everything I thought was mine was actually just on loan. That crisis became the greatest gift of my life because it forced me to ask the question that changed everything. What would my life look like if it didn't depend on anyone else's consistency, approval, or participation? Machiavelli once said, "Everyone wants to go to heaven, but nobody wants to die. Everyone wants independence, but nobody wants to pay the price of building it. That price is temporary discomfort, delayed gratification, and the discipline to build something sustainable instead of something immediately satisfying." Building systems requires thinking in longer time horizons than most people are comfortable with. It means creating multiple streams of income instead of depending on one paycheck. It means developing skills that travel with you instead of depending on one company's training programs. It means building your own validation systems instead of depending on other people's praise. It means creating your own schedule instead of living by someone else's calendar. This isn't selfishness. This is strategic thinking. This isn't isolation. This is independence. When you have systems, you can engage with people from a position of choice rather than need. You can collaborate without compromising. You can commit without surrendering control. Here's what happened when I committed to building systems instead of dependencies. I stopped being afraid of other people's moods because my emotional stability didn't depend on their approval. I stopped being afraid of economic uncertainty because I had developed multiple valuable skills and income sources. I stopped being afraid of relationship changes because my self-worth wasn't built on someone else's presence in my life. Systems create options. Options create power. Power creates freedom. When you have systems, you don't need to tolerate disrespect, accept unfair treatment, or compromise your values for security. You can walk away from situations that don't serve you because you've built alternatives that do. Dependencies make you negotiable. Systems make you sovereign. The choice is yours, but choose quickly. Every day you spend building someone else's system is a day you're not building your own. Number 7, embrace strategic ruthlessness. This is where we separate the people who want to feel powerful from the people who want to be powerful. This is where we distinguish between those who collect motivational quotes and those who make decisions that actually change their lives. This is where most people stop reading because they're not ready to hear what real power requires. 3 years ago, I had to fire my best friend, not from a job, from my life. We had grown up together, shared everything together, built dreams together. But somewhere along the way, our paths diverged. I was growing, building, creating. They were stagnating, complaining, draining. Every conversation became them explaining why their life wasn't working, while expecting me to fix problems they weren't willing to solve. I kept making excuses for them because I confused loyalty with enabling. I kept giving them my time, my energy, my emotional availability, because I confused friendship with obligation. I kept supporting their mediocrity because I confused kindness with stupidity. The wake-up call came when I realized that every hour I spent listening to their problems was an hour I couldn't spend solving my own challenges. Every piece of energy I gave to their drama was energy I couldn't invest in my goals. Every emotional resource I wasted on their chaos was a resource I couldn't give to people who actually deserved it. Strategic ruthlessness isn't cruelty. It isn't hurting people for sport or taking more than you need just because you can. It's the willingness to prioritize your goals over other people's comfort, your growth over other people's expectations, your truth over other people's illusions about what you should be or do or want. It's saying no to people you care about when what they're asking for doesn't align with where you're going. It's ending relationships that drain your energy, even when those people aren't bad people. They're just not your people anymore. It's making decisions that disappoint people who were counting on you to stay small, safe, predictable. Machiavelli once said, "Since a prince cannot use this virtue of liberality without harm to himself, he should not mind being called miserly. In time he will be thought more liberal when people see that his parsimony has made his revenues sufficient." Sometimes you have to be stingy with your time, your energy, your attention, your emotional availability in order to have enough left over for the things and people that truly matter. Most people avoid strategic ruthlessness because they confuse it with meanness. They think being ruthless means being cruel, but that's not strategy. That's just poor impulse control. Real strategic ruthlessness is calculated, purposeful, and often surprisingly kind in its long-term effects. Sometimes the most ruthless thing you can do is refuse to enable someone's weakness. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do is disappoint someone in the short term to help them grow in the long term. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is remove yourself from someone's life, so they're forced to develop the strength they'll never build while you're carrying them. Your resources, time, energy, money, attention, are finite. Every yes to one thing is a no to something else. Every hour you spend on someone else's priority is an hour you can't spend on your own. Every piece of emotional energy you waste on people who drain you is energy you can't give to people who deserve it. The people who achieve extraordinary things aren't necessarily more talented, more connected, or luckier than everyone else. They're more willing to make decisions that other people aren't willing to make. They're more comfortable with other people's temporary disappointment in exchange for their own long-term satisfaction. Strategic ruthlessness is what allows you to build the life that other people wish they had the courage to build. It's what separates the people who dream about change from the people who create it. It's what transforms you from someone who reacts to life into someone who designs it. Rejection doesn't break you. It reveals where your loyalty still belongs to weakness. The untouchable truth. I want you to understand something that will change how you see yourself forever. You are not broken. You are not behind. You are not too late, too old, too inexperienced, too damaged, or too anything to become exactly who you're supposed to become. You have been systematically programmed to believe that your natural desire for respect, success, recognition, and power is somehow wrong, selfish, or unrealistic. You have been convinced that wanting more than what you currently have makes you ungrateful, that setting boundaries makes you difficult, that prioritizing your goals makes you selfish. These are lies designed to keep you manageable, controllable, and predictable. These are psychological chains that you can remove the moment you decide you're tired of wearing them. Everything I've shared with you today comes down to one fundamental understanding. You are not here to be liked. You are not here to be comfortable. You are not here to make everyone else feel good about themselves while you settle for less than what you're capable of creating, experiencing, or becoming. You are here to become unforgettable. Not through drama, not through attention-seeking, not through trying to impress people who are too small to be impressed by excellence. You become unforgettable by developing such deep competence, such strategic thinking, such emotional mastery, such systematic independence, that your presence changes the energy of every room you enter. This journey isn't about becoming someone else. It's about becoming who you always were underneath all the conditioning, all the people-pleasing, all the fear of what others might think if you actually took up the space you were meant to occupy. The world is full of people waiting for someone else to give them permission to live the lives they actually want to live. They're waiting for their boss to recognize their value, for their partner to appreciate their efforts, for their family to understand their choices, for society to validate their dreams. But you're done waiting. You understand now that permission isn't something that's given, it's something that's taken. Not stolen, not demanded, not begged for, but simply claimed by someone who no longer needs external validation to know their worth. You don't need to announce this transformation to anyone. You don't need to explain why you're different now, why you're not as available for their drama, why you're not as interested in their opinions about your choices. They'll notice the change without you saying a word, because real power doesn't need to be declared. It's simply evident in how you move through the world. The relationships that are meant to survive this evolution will not only survive, they'll become stronger because they'll be built on respect rather than need. The opportunities that are meant to be yours will recognize you before you recognize them. The people who are supposed to understand your worth will see it without you having to point it out. And the rest? The rest were never really yours to begin with. They were just placeholders, keeping space warm until the real players arrived. This isn't the end of your journey. This is the moment you stop asking the world for permission and start taking what was always yours. When you stop explaining yourself to people who are committed to misunderstanding you and start building for people who are committed to growing with you. When you stop trying to be everything to everyone and start being irreplaceably valuable to the right people, you have everything you need to become untouchable. You always did. The only question left is, are you finally ready to stop pretending you don't? You don't need to be louder. You just need to be the one they remember in silence. If you're done being controlled, hit like. If you're ready to become untouchable, subscribe. You don't need permission anymore. Take what's yours.